Good morning. Good morning and welcome to everyone. I'd like to give a very special welcome to Springfield Business Journal's new class of 40 under 40 who joined us this morning. My name is Joyce Narduli. I am the new president of the Citizens Club. And I would like to give a huge thank you to our past president, John Kelker, for all his leadership and his work in bringing us some great programs. Fortunately, John will continue as co-chair of our program committee, so we're not letting go of him just yet. Our 2024-2025 officers include Vice President Angie Muse, Secretary Jim Donnellan, Treasurer Chris Atchison. We have a very, very important and timely program today, the Adams Street Fire, reflecting on the past, developing a vision for the future. As our four presenters come up on the stage, it's my pleasure to thank our sponsors and partners, including WMAY Radio, NPR Illinois, City of Springfield Office of the Mayor Audio and Visual Department, and we thank our coffee sponsor this morning, Kayla Graven, and our coffee is coming from Custom Cup, a downtown place, so thank them. Attendance at the Citizens Club is always free, but if you would like to support the work of the club, annual dues to be a member are $30, and a coffee sponsorship is $120. You can talk with Beverly Bunch this morning. She's filling in for Chris today if you have any questions or if you'd like to join. So now, would our speakers please come up and take your seats? I'm going to introduce our speakers one at a time this morning to give them each about a 10-minute opportunity to update you on what's going on with them. So we'll have plenty of time at the end for Q&A. And then Norm Sims is going to come around with that microphone to get those questions on record. Let's see. First up, we have Chris Nickell. He grew up in rural Sangamon County, attended high school in Williamsville. He received his bachelor's degree from Quincy University in environmental science. After spending 16 years at the Illinois EPA in the Bureau of Land, Chris left the agency to help start a wind energy development company. Chris is now the co-owner and chief operating officer of Highlander Renewables, a utility-scale wind and solar power development company right here in Springfield. And Chris bought his first downtown property in 2012. He now owns or co-owns 10 properties, 7 of which are within 1 block of the old state capitol. Chris and his wife, Asia, have 2 children, Jameson, 11, and Adeline, 9. Take it, Chris.
Oh. So I guess, that's on? Yeah. I was just going to start by explaining I guess what happened and how we got to this point. Oh, there. So on June 19th, I received a call at about 11:30, 11:45. Tom was the one that called me, that there was smoke in the building and that the fire department was on its way. My office is only a couple blocks away. I hustled over there. There was a fire truck already there. I met the first 3 firefighters in the front door. I actually took them upstairs on the elevator because we thought it was something pretty basic and simple, just something smoking on the 3rd floor. When the doors opened, solid wall of gray smoke. They stepped out, told me to go down, and I didn't hesitate, of course. I met the rest of the firefighters coming in the door at the time. Tom and his helpers were carrying the cats out the door. So a strange, surreal scene of cats going out and firefighters coming in. I showed them the stairwell, and so the rest of the firefighters went up the stairwell, and then I proceeded out and spent the rest of the time on the sidewalk with the fire chief, who was the ramrod for the day, directing the firefighters. We still don't know exactly what started the fire. There have been both our local fire department and private investigators who have looked. The fire started somewhere in the ceiling, above the tin ceiling in the 3rd floor, and essentially the ceiling and the roof burn off. Most of you can tell, looking from the street, that all of the charring is above the 3rd floor ceiling. So luckily, I guess not that it matters too much at this point, but none of the rest of the building burnt. The fire department did a good job of containing it in that space above the third floor ceiling. It did unfortunately spread to the into the attic space of the building to the east of us. The wind was blowing to the east, and those attics connect where the building to the west it was shorter, so the fire didn't have a place to go to the west. It could only spread to the east. The water was being put in both from the rear of the building and the front, so the only place it could spread was to the east. So that's what got us, I guess, to the point you see now where the water that was put on it caused the floors to collapse. The second and third floor, if you go in the building about 30 feet, the two floors just fell at a snapping point, and all of that fell slid towards the front. So that's why the storefronts are blown out like they are. The stuff from the second and third floor fell onto the first. So now we're left with a situation. So then that night, the mayor signed an emergency declaration and brought in a track hoe to take the facade off the building. This was done because there was a concern that the facade was unstable because of the floors collapsing. So that's why the facade was taken off the building that night. And so because the facade was taken off, now the two structures to the east and west, essentially, downtown buildings commonly hold each other up, right? They share common walls and they all support each other. When we took the center card out of the house of cards, now the two on either side don't have the structure support in the middle. So now our issue is the Café Moxo building, which we have the restaurant on the first floor and we have 4 apartments above it, and then the building to the east, which is parking on the first floor, indoor parking, and then apartments on the second and third. The stability of those two structures is in question. So we're currently waiting for an engineering design for stabilization of the existing structures, and I shouldn't say in an attempt to save them, because we are going to save the Café Moxo building. I'm not owner of the one on the east, so I can't speak to that one. So we're working on a stabilization plan to be able to hold that common wall steady so we can do the demolition of the burnt structure. They don't want to start, it would be unwise to start that construction before we have the east wall of Café Moxo stabilized, because we don't want to potentially sacrifice that building. The vision of the future, Mark Fornish, most of you probably know him, the owner of Café Moxo, wonderful person and a great business owner. He wants to expand, and of course I want him to be able to expand. So our vision is to excavate the burnt front half of the building. I didn't describe it completely, but that building is 3 stories in the front that burnt, but the rear of the building is 5 stories. The front was constructed in 1904, I believe, and the rear was constructed in 1917, something like that. So it was a 3-story building built first, then they tore the back of it off and built 5 stories in the back. When you're in the building, first, second, third floor, you'd never know that it was 2 separate structures because they tore the back off the first one. So we believe that the rear 5-story structure of the building is still sound, and we can put in some structural supports as we tear out the front to save the 5-story structure in the back. So what we will be left with then is a plaza or a patio area where we remove the 3-story section. It's 40 foot wide by about 65 feet deep or so, depending on what we put back. New facade on the 5-story building in the back, and then some sort of facade structure up on the sidewalk so that we don't lose the streetscape, right? We don't want a smile with a tooth knocked out, right? We want to historically preserve the viewshed of the facade. So that's our long-term vision. So you have a facade that's kind of a false facade you walk through, and then you're in an outdoor seating patio area. Café Moxo then could expand into the first floor of the 5-story building in the rear. You've all eaten there. You know how confined their kitchen is, right? I mean, it's amazing. You've all eaten there probably. 300 square feet. That's his kitchen. I mean, how many of us at home have kitchens bigger than that, right? So allowing him both a beautiful outdoor seating area, maintain the side that he has indoor now, and then let him expand his kind of backroom operations into the newly renovated 5-story structure, and then we'll do mixed use above that. Each of those floors of that 5-story they're over 2,000 square feet apiece. So we're talking about 10,000 square feet that will remain of this building. So the building's not lost, just the front half, basically. So we're hopeful that all the pieces of that puzzle will fall into place, but it is a bit early. But that's our vision of what could be there soon.
I think we'll take Tom next. Tom Raymond is a resilient individual, driven by passion for community, determined to make the Cat's Pajamas Cat Café a refuge for all. Originally from the Metro East St. Louis area, Tom moved to Springfield to pursue a master's degree at UIS. 6 years ago, while recovering from colon cancer and undergoing chemotherapy, Tom embarked on the mission of creating a cat cafe as a sanctuary for those seeking solace from trauma and pain. Tom's commitment to the community and downtown revitalization is unwavering. He honed his business skills through Innovate Springfield and graduated from their co-starter program. With guidance from Downtown Springfield, Inc., Tom diligently searched for the perfect location for his cafe. Tom is happily married to Samantha, dedicated Lincoln Land Community College trustee and realtor. And together with their son Kieran, they aspire to make the cafe an inclusive, welcoming haven for all. Tom has ingrained himself in the Springfield community by volunteering at the Abe Lincoln Presidential Library Museum and at the UIS Performing Arts Center. So with unwavering determination and a heart full of compassion, Tom has gathered invaluable experiences setting the stage for the continued success of the Cat Cafe.
Thank you, Joyce. Appreciate that. Yes, again, my name is Tom Raymond. I appreciate you all being here this morning. Not evening, this morning. Just to kind of go on top of what Chris was saying about the morning of the fire, yeah, I did call him, but I was not the one who initially called the fire department. It was actually one of the residents in the apartments above Mock. So my experience was very similar to what he talked about. I noticed the smell about 11:30 before I called him. Being a cat cafe, I thought it was just the smell in the cat cafe, but going into the cat cafe, things were quite normal, as normal as can be. And then I opened the elevator doors, and that's when the Puma smoke that Chris described earlier, I saw the same thing then. And then I went up to the 3rd floor and found the room covered in smoke, and then from there the fire department showed up at that time just because the timing was just perfect. And then from there I went down to the 1st floor and alerted our 2 guests we had at the time that there was a bit of an emergency and that they would need to help us by picking up one of the cats and bringing it to the reception area. So we started collecting the cats and putting them into our acclimation cages just to keep them safe for a time being. And once we knew we had to leave the building because there was a serious threat, we got them over across the street into Buzzbomb. During this time, though, it was pretty tough for me because, as Joyce had explained, I had spent years trying to develop this business, and we'd only been in operation for less than 4 months. In less than 4 months, we'd had almost 2,000 visitors, and we had countless other people coming to the window and people just stopping in and saying hi and wanting to say hi to the cats who were acclimating, or to Chief, who's now at my house. Chief is a wonderful orange tabby who's been a very fun celebrity now. Seen him at farmers markets lately, and probably see him at the new cafe soon, but I'll get to that in a bit. But on the morning of the fire, we were in Buzzbomb, and a lot of people were coming up to me asking if I was okay, and no, I was not okay because I was seeing my business being destroyed in front of me, but physically I was fine because there was no damage to me or the cats. But I was just trying to think, what can I be doing right now? Because there's nothing I can do. I can't go into the building and start, fighting the fire and getting my stuff out of there. But I had the cats, and they were needing to get out of there, and some were already in terms ready for adoption, so we had to get them back to the APL. Others need to have a couple more days so we can try to get them adopted. So I worked with Chris, and he had a space that we knew was available to house the remaining cats in for the time being. And so I worked with people at Buzzbomb and myself and some of the city officials who had blocked off part of the streets, and they helped me get into where I needed to go and out where I needed to go. ago, and then I got to the space where Chris allowed us to house the cats for a couple days, to where we eventually got them over to APL to get adopted. We were still in a fostering situation because by the time we had them over to the building space, we only had 4 left because we got the rest back to APL where they were getting ready for adoption, because the fire really helped get the word out there for the cats and really helped get them to homes where they need. It's an unfortunate bright side to the whole situation where we had 9 cats housed and we had 8 of them adopted rather quickly. One of them, the only one that didn't get adopted was Hera, who had health issues anyway, so she was going to return to the APL that week regardless. The rest were luckily now good homes. So within the 4 months, we now had a total of 18 cats adopted, but unfortunately the business is gone. And I'll tell you that the day of, I was not really sure if I was going to restart. I was just focusing on getting the cats adopted and getting them out of my care, and hopefully to fulfill my one mission of, provide a place for people to be happy and to enjoy themselves. I got 18 cats adopted. My mission was, at my point, successful. But I found a lot of support from the community, from my wife, and we decided to restart. It's still pretty tough because I lost a lot of my personal stuff there. I did manage to get a lot of my stuff I really enjoyed back. But I will say that after a month and a decent amount of support from the community, we will be reopening just actually right around the corner here at 524 East Capitol Street. We're finalizing the lease hopefully today so we can start moving in this weekend and start actually painting and renovations. Thank you. And believe me, opening a cat cafe or getting a new location within a month is a miracle, because trust me, it took 3 years just to convince people that the idea was even something to do. But a lot of business owners didn't see it that way. Some people, even after 3 years, when I was getting the location for Chris, were like, "Oh, you're still doing that?" I'm like, yeah, it's, I was the 3rd cat cafe in Central Illinois to be open. I mean, besides Chicago and St. Louis, we had cat cafes for years. By the time we opened, Bloomington had one, Alton had one, and a week after we opened, Peoria opened theirs, and just right now, Champaign is trying to open their own cat cafe / board game cafe. So it is definitely an idea that's spreading. And while every other city has their own first cat cafe, we will now have our second cat cafe. So yeah, that's a joke I like to say. Is like I opened the first cat cafe in Springfield, and now I get to be the historical owner of the second cat cafe in Springfield. So we'll work on that. Look, keep an eye on our Facebook page and website as I try to develop it. Like I said, I'm working on funding is pretty much not all settled, but to what we need to get in there is fine. What we need is a lot more resources in terms of furniture, because the fire and the water mostly destroyed most of our furniture. It's hard to listen to Chris talk about the destructions of the first floor, because I just think about the French bench that was up in there, the many portraits and pictures, all the things. I'm sure a lot of you had probably been there, some seen pictures. It's been a tough time, but I really appreciate everyone's support to restart, because it was a fun place. It was really nice for people, and I want to try to do it again. Thank you.
Elizabeth Wake is the founder and owner of the Wakery, Springfield's first fully non-alcoholic bar and coffee house. During her master's studies in public administration program at UIS, Elizabeth noticed a need both for a coffee house open past 2 p.m., as well as late-night hangout space that was neither a restaurant nor a bar. Using her studies in HR, budgeting, statistical analysis, marketing, and fundraising, Elizabeth opened the Wakery in April of 2023. On 5th Street, it's between Washington and Adams. She wanted to be a part of downtown's revitalization efforts, as well as to bring something new to Springfield. Elizabeth?
Thank you. So on the day of the fire, I had a rental group in there. So we, sometimes I'll have rental groups rent the whole space out. This group had been there for the whole week. And so they were having meetings with international students, and around 11:30, we started to smell smoke in the building. And I sort of thought, well, the farmer's market is going on. Maybe they're grilling something. It kind of smelled like barbecue smoke. And then our smoke alarms went off. And so I swiftly evacuated everyone, and we walked outside and saw, oh yes, there is a building completely on fire. So had to abandon everything within the Wakery, so all of the dirty dishes, all of the espresso machine that had been running, which if you've ever used an espresso machine, if you do not clean that daily, you're gonna have some problems. And we couldn't get back in until a week later, so we had some problems. But had to leave everything in there and just get my clients out safely. Because our back door is where that parking garage is, we were filled with smoke because, as Chris said, it blew to the east above that parking garage. So that's where my car was parked, as well as inside that parking garage, which got blasted with water. So that was a whole situation that has not been usable since. And our back door is still not usable. So we had to wait a week before we could get back in, which is a week of, if you've ever owned a business or been to a business, you can imagine that a week of no revenue is a very big deal for you. You still have to pay your rent, you still have to pay your utility bills, you still have to pay all of the things that you have to pay. And we had no income during that week. So I wanted to make sure that at least my employees could be paid, because a lot of them rely on this money to pay their bills. So I started up a GoFundMe for them, which was very generously supported by the community. So I was still able to pay my employees for that week, which was huge, because that's really important for their livelihoods. But as I said, we couldn't get back in for a week. So we lost power for 3 days. Most of the things in our walk-in refrigerator, of course, without power, were completely destroyed. So that's a lot of product loss. And then the espresso machine, because it hadn't been cleaned in a week and had been sitting dirty for a week, was not usable. Fortunately, the company was able to send a tech out, and they cleaned it and repaired it for free, which was really a huge blessing, because typically you probably wouldn't have that. So I was very fortunate to have that, but we lost yet another week of espresso service, which is half of our income, because they couldn't get out for a week. So for us, while we did not lose our physical space, it was a huge blow of income for us as a business that's only been open for just over a year. And just is one of those things that you don't expect as a business owner. You know, you go into business not thinking that you're going to deal with all of these things. So for us, it was just a very trying time, a very confusing time. But we are back in business. Our espresso machine is back up. We are able to continue our full menu of business. And we are back open and thriving. Still waiting on our insurance, hopefully what they will cover. But that can take a while. So the last time that we had to do that, it took 6 weeks to get the insurance to come through. So still waiting on all of that, but hopefully that will come through, and we will continue to thrive in downtown and continue to support the other businesses down here.
Chris Richmond, president of Moving Pillsbury Forward, and this is a not-for-profit that's focused on the environmental cleanup and redevelopment of 18 acres of the former Pillsbury Mills site here in Springfield. The art and the artifacts from the Pillsbury site were exhibited and stored on the 3rd floor of the 413 Adams Street building. Chris is a Springfield native and had a 25-year career with the Springfield Fire Department before retiring from his position as the city's fire marshal in 2019. And I should tell you all that he is also on the Citizens Club board. So, Chris?
Yeah. So our experience clearly with the fire started at about noon on June 19th. That was, of course, a Wednesday. It was also Juneteenth, so I had some volunteers that didn't have to work that day. They had the day off, so we had a full crew of volunteers out at the Pillsbury site that morning. And of course, 2 or 3 of us, our phones started ringing. We were told, hey, you're building downtown where your things are stored. The fire department's there. And I thought, initially, I had a 25-year career on the fire department. Initially, I thought, you know what? Usually these things are put out pretty quickly. It's not going to be a big deal. I'm not going to get too excited about this. Well, 15, 20 minutes go by and another phone call comes and says, no, you better get down here. So we wrapped up our operations at Pillsbury. We came down, and of course it was, at that point, heavy smoke coming out of the roof of the building. Clearly the fire was in the front of the building, and as we all watched it unfold for the next 2 hours, it was to take, really. We knew what we had in there. My curator of artifacts and art, Robert Mazrum, he and I were out on the sidewalk, and Robert's here today, and he'll kind of explain maybe a little bit more why we chose downtown and the Adams Street specifically a few months prior. But, that day we're out on the sidewalk and we're like, oh my gosh, we had bankers' boxes full of paperwork from Pillsbury historic documents to go through, and ironically we had brought them to downtown and the 3rd Street building because Chris had purchased the building, was making investments in the building, had put a new roof on it just months earlier, and we knew we had a good, dry, climate-controlled space as opposed to what we have out at Pillsbury. And our interest was in the long-term preservation of these artifacts and documents and having a space to work with them, to preserve this part of Springfield's history. And, of course, that Wednesday in the noon hour, we watched most of that literally go up in flames. That was stored in that front office right at the front of the building where the seat of the fire was. So that day we felt, oh wow, most everything's lost. And as we watched part of the building collapse, we thought we could actually see our art and artifacts in the building. But clearly the building was unstable. Much of our collection was going down to the 2nd floor and the 1st floor in a pile of rubble. And we really didn't, by the end of the afternoon, we really didn't feel like we were going to be able to recover anything from the building. So it was a tough day all around. And again, 25 years on the fire department, I'm used to being on the other side of that. So yeah, this was kind of a new thing for me. Luckily, after things sorted out for a few days and the investigators did what they did, that the insurance folks did what they did, Chris was able to get the building turned back over to him. And so after about a 2-week period, I want to say, we were allowed access back into the 3rd floor, kind of at our own risk, because of course the 3rd floor, particularly the front third of the building, is very unstable. We were able to actually get in. Robert and another friend initially got in, and I got in with Robert a little later, and we were able to recover about 30% of the art and artifacts that were really toward the back half of the building and really minimally impacted, at least by fire, although everything was pretty soaked and suet stained. But a number of our artifacts were recoverable. We had some media attention just this last week when we put out some information on our Pillsbury Doughboy, Bicep Doughboy panel. We were able to get that out and dig out some other very important artifacts as well as the art that was in the building. So we're thankful for that. And again, this month, as things have kind of progressed, we've resolved ourselves that we know we've got a core collection enough that we want to reconstitute an exhibit. Many folks know that we had an exhibit out at Pillsbury last fall. We had, over the course of 3 months in the fall, we had about 3,500 visitors out at Pillsbury that saw the exhibit that Robert put together, the Echoes of Pillsbury exhibit. Most of that then moved downtown to the Adams Street building in February and into March, where we put together an exhibit and had an opening at the end of March. Again, another great response. We were open for 2 nights where we had over 200 people came through, saw that exhibit. We were able to videotape it. And we do believe at this point we've got enough to reconstitute the exhibit. We've got 30% of our artifacts back. And we would like to identify a new place, ideally downtown, for all of the same reasons why we were downtown in the first place, because, you know, there's a great energy, and particularly on Adams Street, this sort of all of the different businesses that play off of each other and bring people there with the different elements. We wanted to be a part of that, and we wanted to be a part of sort of this downtown rebirth, and particularly this reactivation of this Adams Street building that had essentially sat vacant on the upper levels for probably a generation, I don't know, 20 years or more. And we very much wanted to be a part of that. So that kind of explains where we're at and with our thing. And unfortunately, you know, the irony here for us is that, you know, we brought it downtown for preservation, and unfortunately much of it was destroyed. But thankfully, you know, as we look forward, we've got 30% of it there, much of the more important artifacts, and we've picked ourselves up and we're ready to move forward. And it's been a great month of seeing the support for downtown, the Adams family, and being a relatively new part of the Adams family, and what's going on that area of Adams Street has really been a great thing. So we look forward to hopefully being a part of that as we move forward into the future.
Speaking of the great Springfield community, everyone has been trying to chip in different ways to help these people, and I know that you can go still to the Illinois National Bank and you can make a donation if you feel so inclined, and on our Facebook page at the Citizens Club, we also have a link to the INB site. So if you're interested in helping these people, before we go to questions, I'd like to ask each of them if you can tell me how has those sites, INB, maybe others, helped you to get back on your feet. Tom, could you give us a...
Yeah, so we had a couple avenues of fundraising since the fire. INB funds, we received a check recently for that. I know another round was due today, so I might be able to have time to get that finished today. We'll see. In any case, the other avenues of fundraising was I had a GoFundMe page as well. That was directly personally for me and my family, because we spent a lot of our personal funds to open the Cat Café, but also as was mentioned earlier, I did have colon cancer about 6 years ago, but even during that time, I never had a fundraiser for my medical funds or anything like that, because I thought I was getting enough support from family and such. But you know, years had gone by and I was still having more and more needs of my health and stuff like that. And Cat Cafe came around to try to help everyone else with their needs, so that's why I'm still losing funds. But luckily the GoFundMe page has actually reached our needs for that, so that's good. But other than that, we also directly receive donations from the community through our own a Square account from our business. We also sell merchandise now at farmers markets and other vending events when we can, and we're going to try to continue that as well, because we found that the community does appreciate seeing us out there, and we want to be out there, especially on Adams Street at the farmers market, because of where we used to be, and we want to continue that as well. So those fundraising avenues have worked out a lot. But I will say, even though money has been extremely helpful to restart us, if anybody has cat eye objects like cat trees, cat beds, other things like that, we're going to need those donations as well, because we lost all of that in the fire. All organic and electric stuff was lost because we only collected some plastic things because we couldn't disinfect those, but anything organic and electric was gone. So we 30% of some people we got 10% of our stuff. So we will need definitely donations for that. So we've received a lot of help, but that's our future help needs.
Would they take that right to your new store on Capitol?
Yes, we'll accept it then. We'll have more information about that in days to drop it off, but just have that stuff ready and people have ideas. We've had some people I have 10 cat trees. I'm like, yes, we'll take each one of those. If we don't use them, we'll get them over to the APL, or we'll get them over to one of the other shelters, make sure we'll get them used. Because anytime we don't use something, we always make sure it got to the other shelters in town.
Chris?
So I'm obviously, as the owner of the buildings in this situation, I have a little bit different situation than these folks. But the building that actually had the fire, do and did have insurance. Unfortunately, it was declared a total loss. So if any of you dealt with insurance companies, the way they do that is like, here's your check, we're out, right? So that's going to be a little concerning going forward. On the Café Moxo building, because we're saving that building and renovating it, that procedure as far as insurance is concerned hasn't really started yet because we haven't been able to do any work. So there's still no bills to be paid necessarily in that situation. All that being said, the fund that was set up at INB, I was prodded to fill out an application, and so I did. I tried to make it very clear that it's appreciated, but please take care of all the businesses first. If there's anything left at the end, I'm happy to use them to help rehab the Moxo building. I did receive a disbursement in the first round, and it's wonderful that money's still coming in to help. For me, of course, there's a little bit of underlying guilt because of what happened in my building. It has impacted so many folks. Just in my own buildings, we had 4 tenants in the building that burnt, and then I have Café Moxo right next door, and I had 4 residential tenants above that. All of those people are without their space right now. So, in my book, those are the folks that need the support right now. And we've been trying, not to drag this out too much, but I've been trying to help relocate. Tom has found a space. Electric Quill Tattoo, we're able to move them over into the Carasotis building. I did have one empty apartment, so I was able to move one of my residential tenants. The other 3 are still staying with friends or family or hotels. Or I'm not completely up to speed on all of those, but those are the folks that are certainly impacted great in a more great fashion.
Right, and for our part with moving Pillsbury forward, we didn't have insurance on art and artifacts. Those are things that are very hard to insure. But at the same time, we didn't apply for any of the funding either. We had clearly items that really can't be replaced and are very, very hard to put a price tag on the art and artifacts. So our efforts have been toward, we had a board meeting early on, day after, and said, look, we're not interested in applying for funding. There are other businesses and people put out of their homes that are much more in need than we are. And so our focus became on trying to recover what we could. So really that's been our focus for the last month.
So as a business, of course, we had business insurance, and I saw a lot of comments on social media about well, why do they need these funds? Don't they have insurance? Insurance should cover this. Just apply for your insurance. Well, the problem with that is, first of all, insurance doesn't come through for many weeks. And so when you have bills that need to be paid immediately or employees who need to pay their own bills immediately, you want to get those checks paid. Second, our insurance doesn't kick in until 12 hours after an incident occurs. So that entire day of business, they will not cover that as a day lost of that first day. And then it only goes through to the day that we were allowed back into the building. That doesn't mean that we could open yet. There still was smoke damage that had to be cleaned out. For the health department, we had to wash every single surface, every single dish. We had to make sure that any of our food items were safe. We had to go shopping again. It was a multiple day ordeal. But insurance doesn't cover those days lost because technically we were allowed back in the building. So technically we could do business. And so those are multiple days of income that insurance doesn't cover. And then, of course, you have your deductible. So there are a lot of expenses that insurance isn't going to cover. So the INB fund is really crucial to help cover a lot of those things that, yes, insurance will cover a good chunk of it, but there's a lot that they won't. The espresso machine, which because we could be back in business and the espresso machine wasn't damaged by the smoke or the fire, we couldn't use it because it hadn't been cleaned in over a week. But insurance doesn't care about something like that. So then that additional week that we couldn't use the espresso machine and had half of our income cut because we couldn't do espresso drinks, that's not covered. So when people ask, why do these businesses need an extra fund, shouldn't insurance cover it? Those are multiple reasons why. And that is something that the INB fund is helping us get back on our feet and cover some of those expenses.
Thanks. I think, Norm, if you'll go right to Robert here, he has...
Going to do that, and I appreciate it. This gentleman was mentioned earlier. We're going to give Robert a chance to say a few things, and if you would introduce yourself, Robert, because I don't think these old people in the back row can read your name badge.
My name is Robert Masrum, and I have been the curator of the exhibits and the art events on site at Pillsbury for about a year and a half. And I am the one who decided to move to Adams Street after a couple of very successful events out on the Pillsbury site to see if we could transfer that energy downtown, because one of the most successful aspects of these projects has been seeing new faces in new places, right? I don't have much time to talk. I just need to clarify, though, that my relationship with Chris, I have a separate not-for-profit. We went into a relationship with Chris. He was very generous. It was kind of a symbiotic thing to use an unused space for something special. The bulk of what was in there, there was 3 tons of material in there. Now, a lot of that weight was because some of the props in the background from Pillsbury weighs a lot. But most of what was in there was art that was made by myself and a small group of artists over the last 2 years. There was over 100 pieces in there. We've got about 15 of them back. We had no insurance. All we had is liability. My 501c3 couldn't afford to do any more than liability. We weren't a business. No one was paid. We didn't charge admission. We did sell some art, and based on the prices we had on the art, we lost over $15,000 worth of art in that fire. On top of that, then, there were artifacts that were borrowed from Chris's organization that we helped excavate from the factory over the last year. Those are harder to value. This is catastrophic for us, and we can't fix it. And I need to clarify that, and we have no insurance. I mean, all the lighting in there, I just bought it at Menards. This is really bad. And it's been, what makes it so hard is that the response that we got from this was remarkable. I just did this because I wanted to do it. I was having a good time. When we set up at Pillsbury for the visitors event, I don't know if anybody went to the nighttime visitors show. I expected 75 people, and we had 1,000 at a dead factory on the east end of town. So I didn't move the stuff to Adams Street so it would be safer. I moved it so I could see if that vibe, not a particular painting or a particular artifact, could be somewhere else, but to see if we could transform that vibe downtown in a very different location to see if we could get new faces. And we got a lot of people on those 2 nights, and we don't even advertise this stuff. So that's what I really want to say, is that we lost a lot, but thank you so much for the reaction that you've given us on the projects that we've done over the past 2 years.
And thank you.
Norm, wait a sec. Is Leah from the Kidseum here? She wanted to come and talk today, but
She's in the back.
she's in the back?
Yes.
Leah, do you want to say a few words about how you've been affected by this as well?
Hi, I was not prepared to speak today, but I am happy to see a room full of people and also happy to share news from Kidseum. Many of you have been to Kidseum, I hope, for the farmers market and have seen the mural that that we recently finished. And that was one of our big concerns as the fire broke out. We had our mural artists there, and they were just finishing up, and I was watching the smoke come across the road and not sure what the end result would be, but I'm happy to say that we had no damage to the mural, and we did evacuate our building. We had some immediate interruption of our facility, but we quickly resumed our business operations, and our summer camps have been running. Many of them have been off-site. I will say that, we were looking at our numbers, and we're about 34% down in admissions since the fire. So it's definitely had an impact on us, and I know that we're not alone. I know a lot of other businesses on Adams Street have had that same kind of result from the fire. And so it's just, really heartwarming to see everyone here and everyone who's been supportive of Adams Street, and I really look toward the future and what we can do when we all work together to build a stronger downtown.
Thank you. If you have a question, please give your name and try to be concise so we can get more in. First, this young man. Do you have a question, sir? Yes. We're trying to get younger members into the club. Who has any questions? Up from the lady in the front.
My name is Connie Bussard. I've lived in this community since 1960. In my life, I have lived through an entire school burning down, and I simply just want to applaud you for your ability and how you're reacting to this, because it could really ruin people, and you're not. You're picking up and you're going forward, and I simply want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for doing what you're doing, because it ain't easy, and I really applaud you for it. Thank you.
Here, here. Anybody? No, I'll ask a question. Chris, you mentioned that, particularly since Val's here and the alderman, you mentioned the question about the announcement of the proclamation by the mayor shortly thereafter. Has there been any other discussions with the city or any of you about rebuilding?
I think he's looking at you. Yeah.
This Chris? Okay. So the emergency declaration and then
Yeah,
what?
has there been anything else with the city since that time?
No, nothing official. I had a meeting with the city on Wednesday, the days of, I tell you what, the fastest month of my life, I think, has been the last, it's all a blur. The city is essentially in a holding pattern, essentially waiting for me and the engineers and architects that I'm working with to present them this plan for stabilization, because they need to issue a building permit and or a demolition permit for any work to move forward. So my communications with the city have been essentially just them being ready to receive that information, and of course, kind of some updates on, we've got people, for a while they had those little police station things with the flashing light and well, those are gone now, which means now the scrappers are getting in. I ran a guy off this morning who was trying to steal stuff out of Café Moxo. So those are kind of the immediate concerns right now. Just it's past the public safety now, and now we're more into like the nuisance issues. But no, there's been no official actions on the behalf of from the city yet. Hopefully, we will have something in front of them soon.
Hi, Bernie Schoenberg here, and this is, people might know this, but just two things. One, do we know how the fire started? And two, a question for Tom. I'm not really aware of what a Café is and does, and I just would appreciate an explanation. Thanks.
On the fire, no, there's been no official. Our local fire department has I remember exactly what the wording is, unknown or undetermined. Undetermined. And the private fire investigators who the insurance company sent in essentially have said the same thing. I've told everyone from my own experience in that building, and the guys from Pillsbury can confirm, we had, so the fire was above, there was a drop ceiling, and then the old tin ceiling, and then the attic space. What burned off was above the tin ceiling, right, in this. And so we didn't even have operable HVAC. There was nothing above that tin ceiling. So essentially, something electrical is all that we can think it could have been, somewhere, but, around that drop ceiling or tin ceiling, some old wiring or something. The building had been renovated several times in its history, so it had, standard drop ceiling with 2x4 lights and stuff in it, just like you would expect in an office building. But no, we have no clear indication.
And to answer Bernie's question about a cat cafe, this is a question I get a lot on the website as well. Cat cafe is I'll try to do a little bit of history. It kind of originated in the Asian countries like Japan and Taiwan, where people would kind of go into a cafe and cats would just be free roaming and just kind of a friendly location for people to hang out in. But in the United States, the location has kind of evolved where it's more of an enclosed space where the cats roam and live in, and they are adoptable. So in the United States, we have a system, like especially here in Illinois, you can go to several cat cafes. Like I said, Bloomington, Alden, Peoria have one in the area. And so they essentially have their cafes separated from the cats' rooms, and the cats are all adoptable in there, and allows for people to kind of feel welcomed and comfortable and kind of refreshed, and kind of a lot like Elizabeth's Wakery business, where it's like people aren't, having to go to a bar or a restaurant to feel kind of recharged and refreshed from the community. And then also it provides an extra opportunity to connect with a cat in a way that's not as accessible like it is as a shelter or like at the events at Ace or PetSmart. Because a lot of the people who came through our cat cafe really enjoyed being there because they had met some of the cats actually outside before they came to our location when they were at PetSmart at the shelter. And they said, we really enjoyed the cat, but we didn't know its personality. But here it's playing, it's living, it's enjoying itself. It's actually having a time because it's transitioning from the shelter life into a home life. And a lot of these cats actually weren't from shelters. A lot of them had to be released from homes, and they were living in shelters being very uncomfortable. So once they got to our location, they felt more like what they were used to. So that's why the Cat Cafe was really a helpful location for the shelters, because we allowed to be a branch location for APL where their extra cats were allowed to be there that weren't used to the shelters, or ones that they wanted to have extra care and love as well, that needed more acclimation. So our Cat Cafe really helped with all those needs.
I can tell you're not the only one that was confused at first. Of course, I received his business plan and reading it, and then as we were getting ready to open, I got a call from the city, building and zoning, and they're like, "You're not certified to be a cafe. You can't open." And I'm like, "Well, that's not at all what it is, right?" They saw the word cafe and assumed he was going to be, cooking people lunch, but that wasn't the way it worked.
Yeah, that was another thing. Is like our Cat Cafe is different than a lot of other locations where we didn't have a kitchen on site. We sold pre-cooked food, or we were going to be selling pre-packaged products like Elizabeth's drinks and some products from Beelzebub's. We're going to try to continue that now that we actually have the funds to probably actually move forward with that in the new location. But we didn't have a kitchen on site. Other locations did, but we didn't.
At least building and zoning didn't think you were cooking cats. So
not this time, no.
I'm Val Yazel, Economic Development Director for the city. I first want to say that the mayor is in something unavoidable had come up, and she was unable to be here today, but I know she really, really wanted to be here with you. So I first want to say that to everyone. Kayla and I, we didn't go down right away as the fire was starting on the 19th because we didn't want to be in the way, because we know a lot of people were looking around and we thought we'd stay. Then we got the word that the structure was in danger, so Kayla and I went down around 5 o'clock. Now, mind you, also, our mayor was at the hospital with a firefighter, so we went down and we started talking to business owners. We talked to Chris, we talked to Bill, the other business owner. We started talking to the people, the tenants that were going to be displaced, some of the business owners, and then we spent the entire Thursday in Mobile Command Center down there, trying to meet with people, walking around and doing all that. So, we've been very closely involved in this, and I want to follow up, Connie, with what you said. Sitting there, I have tears in my eyes as I'm watching that building go down, and Chris is still got this attitude of, I don't even know quite how to explain it, but, he had a few little jokes, probably nervous jokes, but I thought, what an attitude. And was it a week that you came in showing us your plans, your ideas for what was going to be moving forward? And I was just blown away by that. What an attitude. What a way to work through adversity and to keep positive. And all I'm going to say to you is I'm going to do everything I can possibly to help rebuild this and get our downtown back in order. So thank you for all of your support.
Any other questions? Chris, I know it's not your property, but has anybody heard anything about what the plans are related to the property to the east? Has any of that bubbled up at all?
Nothing that I know specifically, no. And in my meeting with the city on Wednesday, I don't think they had heard anything either.
Any other questions from the audience? This gentleman. Whoops.
Thank you. Not necessarily a question, just also wanted to make a statement. My name is Blake Meyer. I'm with the office of Congresswoman Nikki Budzinski. Just wanted to be here and express our support for the local businesses affected. Our office is right around the corner on 4th Street where the Resource One building is. So a lot of the people in our office are frequent visitors of Café Moxo, and a lot of us get our breakfast from the farmers market every Wednesday, so definitely hits home with a lot of the people in the office. So just wanted to make myself available to anyone that has been, affected by the fire, just from a federal resource standpoint. Happy to be of any assistance that we can. I know that some folks in our office have already talked to some of the business folks here, so just wanted to make myself available. If you haven't spoken with us already, please find me, and I'd be happy to just speak with you and be of any assistance that we can as an office. Thanks.
He's walking right up to the front, and I enjoy that. Anything else, Joyce?
I didn't hear you, but I don't think, are there any more questions? If not, yes, Alderwoman.
You don't need a mic.
I probably don't need a mic.
Norm's getting his exercise.
Yes, I've had a knee replacement, but I'm still slow.
You're okay. I just want to echo what everyone said, but wanted to wait to the end to give my comments. It was very emotional because this was the first time that I saw all of our businesses, and sorry, I'm Lakeisha Purchase, the Ward 5 Alderwoman that represents most of downtown that this took place in. But to get all of our businesses together, and I want to say that was the first time I saw Chris get emotional, so it made all of us emotional too. And the businesses just coming together to talk about solutions, how they can move forward. And sometimes it's really hard because everybody has their own business and their own needs, but people had put that aside and said, what can we do as a united team to make this a better block and to move forward? And now is the time for us to figure out how to move downtown forward, as well as not just about Adams Street, because I don't want to get in trouble by Elizabeth, and she's on 5th Street too, but that continued dialogue of things that's going on. And this was very open eye for me today to hear about more updates and just things that's going on from listening to you all. So I'm here to continue to support and thank each of you for coming out too to be supportive of the businesses.
Are T-shirts still available? I just want to know that.
No, that's closed.
You should have gotten your T-shirt when you had a chance.
I wanted to add one thing. I know all of us up here, most everyone in the audience probably, I'm preaching to the choir a little bit, we all feel the same way, but our goal going forward is to get as many people interested in downtown when buildings aren't on fire. So hopefully we can, again, bring it back in a manner in which will bring more people downtown and use it as a springboard instead of a setback.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for being here today. I want to thank our panelists and all the rest who are contributing and helping with this effort, and let you know that our next program is August 23rd, and that is the fourth Friday, but it is not the last Friday of August. So please mark your calendars. It's August 23rd, and our guest will be Angie Soul. She's the Executive Director of the YMCA, and she's coming here to discuss the 150th anniversary of the YMCA. So thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing all of you next month in August. Have a great weekend.